All right, so in this video, we're going to talk about why it is that we can't just use a mean. Why is it that we ever need to do any additional statistical calculations? Why is it that when we collect data, we just can't simply boil down the number to that single mean and use that to know all that is that we need to know? And in order to illustrate this, we're going to do this sample study where assume we're a pharmaceutical company and we're marketing a new drug for depression. So for the purpose of this study, we're going to assume that we're measuring depression on a 0 to 30 scale, where a 0 means you have no depression and a 30 means your depression is at the highest level possible. All right, so let's assume we've got 5 people who are in this study, and before they take any drug, these are their depression scores. So the first person has a 9, the next one has an 11, 14, 16, and 10. So the mean depression is 12. And if you think about the scale of 0 to 30, I would consider that mild depression. All right, so we take these 5 people and we give them our drug. We're just going to call it drug number 1. And if you know anything about antidepressants, you know that you really need to be on it for a few weeks to build up your levels before you can really tell whether it's been effective. So let's assume these people are on this drug for, I don't know, let's say 6 weeks. And for each one of these rows, we're going to assume that this person who started as a 9, their level on drug 1 is a 10. So each row is the same person. All right, so here's the first drug that we give them, and you can see on their depression scale, this 9 went up to a 10, 11 went up to a 13, and so on. So the first thing we're going to do is calculate the mean. So the mean of 10, 13, 14, 12, and 11, I'll give you guys a chance to do that on your calculators, and then I will tell you what the answer is. So the mean here is 12. All right, so assume that we were not looking at the data and we were just looking at the means. The mean pre-drug score was a 12. The mean post-drug score was a 12. Would we say that this drug cured their depression or helped their depression? Looking at the mean, absolutely not. When we look at the individual scores, what's going on? Well, the 9 went up to a 10. So that person went up by 1 point. It's probably not statistically significant, but they went up. 11 went up to a 13. 14 remained unchanged. 10 went up to 11. So 3 of these people went up. 1 person was unchanged. And this 1 person here went from a 16 to a 12. So of the 5 people in our sample, the drugs seem to be marginally helpful for just 1 person. But again, ignoring the actual data, if you just look at the mean, I think you would conclude this drug was completely ineffective. Okay, so we're good pharmaceutical company employees. We decide that we're going to market a new drug, and we're going to give these same, so pretend we're going to get rid of this one, and these same 5 people, we're going to wean them off of this drug. We're going to put them on a second drug, and after about 6 weeks, we're going to measure their depression score. So this is drug number 2. All right, so now the 9 went up to a 30, which is the highest possible score, but 11 went down, yada, yada, yada. I'll go back to that in a minute. First, let's calculate the mean. So the mean of 30, 7, 7, 8, and 8 is 12. So again, not even looking at the data, would you conclude that this drug was helpful in treating depression? I think pretty much all of you would conclude that because the mean is identical, that this drug was not effective for depression. But now, because we have such a small sample size, we can go back and look at the actual data points. And you can see for this 1 person, their depression went up to a 30, so their depression basically maxed out. But for the other 4 people in the sample, every single one of them saw a decrease in their depression score. 11 went down to 7, 14 went down to 7, 16 went down to 8, 10 went down to 8. So even though the mean score was the same on the pre and this drug 2, you can see that it was pretty effective for these 4 people. The problem and the reason that this mean was so high was because of this score right here, which we refer to as an outlier. Okay, so was this drug effective? I don't know. It looks pretty good. One person didn't do so great, but 80% of the sample had a reduction. So the mean was not very effective in telling us what was really going on with this drug. All right, just to give you one more example, again, let's assume we decided, even though I think it's pretty good, let's assume we're not going to market this drug. We wean these people off of it, and then we put them on our final drug, drug number 3. 6 weeks later, we test their depression scores. And before we even look at these numbers, let's calculate the mean. 30, 30, 0, 0, and 0. So 60 divided by 5. The mean is, you guessed it, 12. Again, looking at the mean, I would say no difference with this drug over baseline. But again, if you look at the individual scores, these 3 people saw their depression completely eliminated. Now we have the problem of these 2 who went up to max, but 60% of the sample saw their depression completely eliminated. So is this drug effective? Maybe, but you wouldn't know it from looking at the mean. So a mean doesn't tell you everything. You need something else, which we are going to talk about shortly, which is called variability.